Good evening. Welcome to our show. We have a very special Zoom program today. We have some very good audience, and also we have special guests who will be enlightening us on the issue of Iran and troubled times. We have Ms. Banafsheh Zand. She's an Iranian human rights advocate, a journalist, and also she's an author who writes on several issues on human rights. We have Mr. Hassan Mahmoud. You all know Mr. Hassan Mahmoud. Mr. Hassan Mahmoud is a Sharia expert. He's a poet and a great personality from Bangladesh, living abroad in Canada for many years. We have Mr. Jamal Hassan. Mr. Jamal Hassan is a very good friend of mine and a mentor, I would say. I consider him my mentor. Mr. Jamal Hassan is an analyst of security matters and also an author. He is a regular man in human rights world. We have Banafsheh Zand, who hails from rather a very illustrious family. Our father, Mr. Siamak Puzar, pardon my Iranian Farsi, but if I don't get the pronunciation right, please do correct me, Banafsheh. And Siamak Puzar, he was a famous journalist, human rights advocate, who fell victim to Iranian regimes of Mullas regime. He was, I would say, what we consider our Mr. Manik Mia to be their Mr. Manik Mia. So he was a great man. Her mother, I have already fallen in love with her. She is a great personality. Her mother wrote several books and also, again, do pardon my Iranian, but Maharangizkar, if I got it right.
That's my stepmother. My mother's name is Manda Zand Irvin, who's also a celebrated writer and
very good. Well. But at the end of the day, you come from a very illustrious family, and we're proud to have you with us. Instead of wasting our time, because the audience are waiting to listen from you, we are all puzzled. Let's start with you, Banafsheh. Let's talk. We'll distribute the program this way. For first half an hour, we'll listen to our special guest, Banafsheh Zand, and we're expecting one more guest who should be joining us soon. She's Mr. Selim Orhan. He's an expert in international conflict, and he is a professor in a university in Turkey of Kurdish origin. Now, coming back to Banafsheh. Banafsheh, first half an hour we'll be listening to you about what's going on in Iran. We'll talk about the past and the policies of Iran. Then the next half an hour, we'll listen to other special guests that we have here. And for the last half an hour, that is, we're spreading the 90 minutes, half an hour, we'll be listening to our other members of the audience who might have some questions to ask. So let's start with you. Banafsheh, what's going on in Iran? We are all puzzled. In Bangladesh, as you know, it's a Muslim majority country. And like what went on in Iran, we are also seeing a Islamic revivalist movement, sort of. And in response to that, free thinkers like me, we are also responding back with our acumen, our intelligence, and our education. But Iran, coming from 1979 to what's going on now, we see rather a movement which is gearing up, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, because most of us might have got it wrong, what's going on. So tell us, is it a counter-revolution or was it suppressed for many years? What's going on in Iran?
Well, let me start out by saying that Iranians never stopped protesting against this regime because the regime was a charlatan entity that basically was an antithesis of itself. So if you think of Shia, the concept of Shia, it's basically the separation of church and state for all intents and purposes. It's meant to be the separation of the mosque and the crown as it was devised. Khomeiniism is an anachronism, and it is an oxymoron. And the fact of the matter is that all of the mullahs who have spoken against the concept of Khomeiniism, which is to basically claim to be Shia, but practice some version of Sunniism, which isn't even a legit version because it's not a king. It's, they claim to be a republic, and they claim to, and then yet there is a supreme leader. So everything about the structure of this regime is not only contradictory and paradoxical, it's also a charlatan entity. There's nothing Shia about these people. These people have basically taken various concepts of Shiitism, and some of them obviously have come from religious families and so on. Some of them were minor ayatollahs who didn't even, like Khomeini himself was not somebody who was grand ayatollah material. He was elevated to grand ayatollah in order to save his skin. But the fact of the matter is this is more like a mafia, or as in Iran, as we call it the insider families. When I tell you that there are more mullahs in the clerical prisons in Iran than there are ruling the roost, you would be surprised.
Right.
We have fantastic mullahs like Ayatollah Hossein Kazemeni Burujerdi. Mm-hmm. I love the man. He is a great human being. He spent 11 years under the most horrific tortures, under the most horrible conditions in those prisons. And not only that, but before that, what the regime did in slaughtering in October 5th and 6th of 2006, they slaughtered his disciples, 700 of them approximately overnight. So to tell you that this is a mafia-run situation is more accurate. There's nothing Shia about them, except for some of their backgrounds. There is absolutely nothing Iranian about them because they have absolutely tried every trick in the book to wipe out all things pre-Islamic and the ancient identity of Iran. They do not care a fig about the Iranian people. They never have. And all they have done is use the gullible Muslims of Islamic world, such as up until maybe 10 years ago, 8 years ago, the Saudis, who were continually insisting that this regime was their friend, though one of the biggest terrorist acts that the regime committed was in the 80s in Saudi Arabia itself. And they continued to naively think that, these Shia, they're Islam, no. The regime has specifically said, and if people don't pay attention, and most people in the Muslim world do not pay attention, the Western world never pays attention, but the Eastern world and the Muslim world is what worries me and freaks me out, to be honest with you. Because when the Khomeiniist regime very openly and repeatedly says that they mean to take over the Islamic pole of the planet, they're not kidding. They are extremely systematic. They're very professional in their knowledge and their ability to operate, spend money, reach out and use connections to people that and gangs you would not believe. They are in bed with the Los Zetas heroin cartels of Mexico. They are in bed with various people in Hamas. Is Adnan dear, Hamas is nothing. Hamas is an obvious point. I'm talking about groups that will blow your mind, like the Japanese Yakuza, like the various Djibouti pirates in Africa, like FARC in South America, in Colombia. So, to be honest with you, this is not the Chinese triads as well. Yes, of course, the Chinese are obvious because they've been in business with the Chinese for many, many years. They're in business with the Chinese government. Forget about the Chinese triads, the Chinese government in and of itself. They have banks, they own banks, co-own banks with various Chinese entities in Macau, money that belongs to the people of Iran. And the heroin trade that they run on behalf of the Taliban, which is a part of what I said, their connection to, drug organizations in Mexico, for example.
They're very strong words, Banafshe, but let's water down to some very specifics. What about this Expedia Council? And this Expedia Council rather seems is worthless effort. Because
listen, you have to think of the Khomeiniist regime as a structure of, they call it themselves the insiders. It's the insiders ruling of the ummat, right?
Because the supreme leader seems to be able to wipe out everything and anything.
Yes, but
if there's a conflict between
keep in mind as well that, first of all, this supreme leader he's on his deathbed. I mean, I know he walks around and all of that, but he's basically being kept alive through IV drips and so on and so forth because he has pretty far gone colon cancer.
Right.
And this is no news. The fact of the matter is that you have to think of the structure of the regime in terms of the mullahs and the IRGC. Mm-hmm. Now, the IRGC is divided into various sections.
Okay, could you explain what is IRGC stand for?
The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And the nature and purpose of their existence is in their name. Right. They are there to guard the Islamic revolution. So the thing is that consider them as the lackeys who in the 80s were doing all the dirty work and they weren't getting any of the glory. But in the 90s, the Revolutionary Guards started wising up and started to taking control of businesses and creating, basically controlling industry, money, assets, everything that the regime that exists within the financial structure of the regime is being considered by is being taken care of by the Revolutionary Guards. They have various corporations. One is called Khatam al-Anbiya. The other one is called Qurb. And they have shell companies all over the planet. And they do businesses with people all over the planet because it's shell company into shell company into shell company. And so now the mullahs are in a position where they're weaker. Reason being that, first of all, there's so much infighting amongst themselves, and they have assassinated each other. Rafsanjani.
Until and unless we get this supreme leader's authority off from your constitution, you can't move much up in the ladder of freedom, can you? Because
true, but here's the point. Here's the point.
He's a constitutional figure.
Yes, but allow me to continue as I was explaining. The supreme leader, as he has existed so far, is Khamenei. Mm-hmm. Khamenei is dying. The inside structure of the mullahs right now is extremely weak. It has eroded. A lot of the grand ayatollahs who would supposedly take over after Khamenei are dying, and they're all in their 90s, 80s and 90s. The younger ones are pretty vicious, and the one specifically is the second son of Khamenei, Mujtaba Khamenei.
And also is the grandson as well, right? One of the grandsons.
No, that's Khomeini's grandson that you're
Yes.
talking about, not
Yes.
Khomeini. Khomeini is one person, was the founder of the revolution.
Yes. But
And
I'm
then there's
saying one of the
Khomeini.
founders, the founder, Khomeini. One of his grandson is also quite influential. Is that right?
Well, he's not really anymore. The children and the wives and the family of Khomeini have been very, very, very marginalized, and they do not really like the way that this regime has gone, and they've been shoved aside, and they've been rendered useless and basically told to shut up. The other grandson, Hossein Khomeini, whose father, Mustafa Khomeini, was against the revolution, was killed at the behest of Khomeini himself before they came to Iran. Mustafa Khomeini was killed in 1978 before the revolution inside Iran even succeeded. So, in a sense, Khomeini and his grandchildren are nobodies now. So it makes no difference. And by the way, I would tell you this. Khomeini was behind a huge part of the operations against the Shah in order to make the revolution succeed. He recruited a lot of terrorists. He was a part and parcel of spreading propaganda and many lies. He had connections in the 70s to a lot of the communist forces in the West, who also helped spread the lies. And so it's a vast network, and Khomeini has pretty much been the force behind it all. Khomeini was in a sense a tool that Khomeini used, but Khomeini was very much part and parcel.
Let's fast track our subjects.
Sure.
What about Hassan Rouhani? You have spoken a lot about Hassan Rouhani. Right?
Hassan Rouhani is a non sequitur.
He was rather a reformist when he was in power, but it seems
no, he wasn't. Hassan Rouhani has never been. No, Hassan Rouhani pretends. And by the way, there's no such a thing as a reformist. that's like saying.
But he was talking about equal rights of men and
no, you can't. I'm sorry, but if you believe in anything or actually listen to anything that comes out of these people's mouths, then you really deserve the lie that you're being told.
Right.
These people do not tell the truth, and that is the bottom line. I mean, come on. As a Muslim, you should understand the nature and purpose of Taqiyya and Ketman. And these realities.
Yes.
These people tell Taqiyya and Ketman to us who can recognize Taqiyya and Ketman from 700 years ago.
Right.
The brazenness, and this is what they count on. They count on Westerners and non-Iranians to buy the lies because they know just the buttons to push. And so they count on people like me, who, as you say, speak strongly. I mean, if the facts.
So all the data that we see that he was quite popular as a leader, and he's in an indirect manner.
Whose data? Who told you?
Iranian data. Iranian government's authority data.
In Farsi we have an expression. We asked the fox who raided the chicken house and said, no, I wasn't the one who did it. We asked this fox, who is your witness? He says, my tail. Okay? This is the story of the Khomeiniist regime, and this is the BS they count on. Excuse my French.
Right. So is the president powerless when it comes to controlling?
Of course.
Because it seems that the supreme leader can do anything.
The only power in the Khomeiniist structure is the supreme leader, who is then backed by the Guardian and the Expediency Councils.
Right.
And the Guardian and Expediency Councils are made up of 700-year-old men. So
where do you think this I want to call it revolution, that we are watching now on television and other media, what's happening in Iran, where will it end? What will be the outcome? Because your constitution has a provision, and there are some amendments as well, that if for some reason the supreme leader is not there or is not in a position to make a decision, then your council and others can have a window of making decisions. Is that what we are heading to?
No, that's not where we're heading to. Where we're heading to is the complete overthrow of the regime.
Right, right. So
because people inside Iran are chanting for the Shah. I'm a monarchist on several levels, although I am not one of those people who says I believe this and this and this is good for Iran. This is my personal, and the only reason why I'm a monarchist is for the fact that it is our cultural and historical glue. It's not because I'm some sentimental person who loves the, no. My own ancestor from 1752 to 1782 was a king in Iran, Karim Khan Zand. Right. But he never called himself a king. He called himself the advocate of the people. Vakil al-Roaya is what he called himself.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is that to me and to the culture of my country, now, I mean, you can't look at it and compare it to India and the Rajas and, all this kind of stuff and the culture of your part of our next door neighborhood.
Right.
It's very different. You've got to think of, it's even different from the Afghans, which is ridiculous, but it is. But the thing is that the nature of Iranian nationhood is binds together historically better and more effectively, let's say, on an identity level as a monarchy.
Right.
Now, the whole idea is that what I'm trying to tell you is that the Iranians who are all under 43, many who are over 43 and who've stayed in Iran, don't want this regime. They don't want anything to do with religion anymore.
Right.
Religion is over inside Iran.
Now, another thing is we are watching how Saudi Arabia is trying to reform to some extent
and they're doing an excellent job of it. I applaud them.
But do you think it might backfire because he is going too fast? The present
No.
Greens? No.
And I'll tell you the reason why. This is the nonsense that they blamed on the Shah. And you know what? I'm sorry, but in the world of 21st, in 1979, that was a ridiculous accusation. Modernizing too fast. No, there's no modernizing too fast because technology and the globalization of the world just doesn't allow for that kind of backwardness anymore.
Right.
That's just if you want to practice your faith and be a religious person, great, good, fabulous. As long as it makes you a better person and you do it in the privacy of your own house, fine. Do whatever you want to do. But to impose that kind and frankly, I think the Saudis have realized this. Because in the end of the day, if you can't control your society, the ills of your society, and the ills of the society are now spilling over from the one society into all societies across the globe. 9/11 proved this.
Now, can I come to the issue of women's rights in Iran?
Sure.
Because there are many people who think that why is this going on in Iran when Islam talks about female rights and it has done a tremendous job in Prophet Muhammad's time and Khalifa Rashidun. What about now? Are the women oppressed when we see that in Iranian universities, as we have the information from various sources, that women go to universities more in number than the men? Then
yes.
What is the problem? What is the problem? Why?
Well, okay, so okay, I basically, my mother has written a fantastic book called The Ladies' Secret Society, The History of the Courageous Women of Iran. And it's about 8,000 years of women's identity in what could be considered ancient pre-Persia, then ancient Persia, up until, so it starts out from the hunter-gatherer and the Neolithic era, and it literally goes until December 31st of 2019.
I see. Okay.
She literally finished that book on January 1st of 2020 and handed it to the publisher. Right. This book tells you that gives you a sort of an overview of the nature of Iranian women's position in Iranian history throughout the ages, throughout the various stages of, pre-Zoroastrian, Mede, Achaemenid, and it just goes on down throughout history up until today. And it shows the Iranian women have been warriors, and they've been soldiers, and they've fought alongside their men, and the Iranian men have stood very firmly alongside Iranian women. And the sad part of it is that after the invasion of the Ghaznavid dynasty, which were the Ottomans, Shiitism was imposed much more strongly inside Iran, because before that it was there, but it was by no means in control of society. And once the Ghaznavid dynasty came into Iran in the 1600s, it just became, it snowballed from there, and the pressure and the manipulations of the Mullas themselves as a sort of a group became more noticeable and more sort of pressured. So this is really a response to this is the Iranian identity's response to 400 years. And you being from Bangladesh, you understand the nature of all of our region's historical selves. Everybody has a relationship to the history and the culture of their nations from that part of the world that we all come from. And so for Iranians, this is very much the same. I mean, the Zoroastrian ceremonies that we still celebrate, our New Year, the Iranian New Year, is still a Zoroastrian New Year. Many of our cultural and traditional customs are still Zoroastrian-based traditions that the mullahs have absolutely attacked and tried to forbid.
They're trying to uproot you from your cultural history, cultural heritage. That's what it is. They're trying to uproot you from your cultural roots. Now we have a lot to listen from you, Manavshe, but we have Dr. Selim Orhan in the room. Dr. Selim Orhan, welcome to our program, and please let yourself known.
Thank you so much. Hi, thank you so much for your perfect presentation. It is very good presentation, really. I'm from Turkey originally. It is very useful. It was very useful for me to listen to her. I am at the moment in Canada. I come to here at Kingston, at Queen's University. I a visiting scholar, and I hope it will be good. We will ask her after other person, I hope. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Orhan. We'll be listening to you a bit more. Now, let's go to the other members of the audience that we have. We'll start with our Sharia expert, Mr. Hassan Mahmoud. Mr. Hassan Mahmoud, if you have something to say, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll be brief. But as the foundation, I will touch one point that we people of Indian subcontinent historically were profoundly impacted by the Farsi culture because the Mughals used Farsi language as the state language, government level. And the reason was when the second emperor, Mughal emperor Humayun, was again repeatedly defeated by Sher Shah, he went to Iran and he came back with the help of Irani emperor's soldiers, and he recaptured his throne. So as a sense of gratitude, he brought many Iranian culture, as you say, Nowruz, and enacted Farsi as the state language of Indian Mughal administration. That profoundly impacted the whole nation of subcontinent in politics, in literature, in music, in everything. Anyway, to begin with, I wish success of this revolution. Those Ayatollahs, Mullas must go, not only because of their brutality, but also any faith state anywhere in the world legitimizes other faith states, other parts of the world. So Iranian Islamic state legitimates Hindu Rashtra in India, Zionist state in Israel. That's against civilization. Now, my two categorical question to you, please answer this. There are some statistics in the internet in favor of the mullahs. This is my greatest concern, that they created a group of Irani people, they means the government. They created a group of Irani people who are supporting the government. This weakens the revolution and creates separation, division among people. Point number two. Some researchers, so-called researchers, show.
Hold that thought, dear Hassan. Let me answer you, because this is a very important point that you've made, and I really should give you a response. They did create that group. That group came into being in the mid-90s. It was perfected by the 2000s, and it took hold in Washington, and they became a very, very powerful lobby. They infiltrated the Obama administration. They offered they were the ones who gave the Obama administration the list of Iranians to blackball. I was one of them. And basically, they did everything they could, and they have bought Democrats. I am not kidding you. They have bought Democrats and several Republicans. They have bought various members of the European Union. That said, that lobby and those agents have been not only exposed, they've been taken to court in America, in Washington, D.C. District Court. They have been very, very, very seriously discredited. And a lot of the funding that they got, not only from Iran, but also from George Soros, has also been exposed. So they're on their way out, and nobody really listens to them unless they're, some crazy person who supports Putin or Xi in China. Basically a dictator lover, or somebody who's not rational enough to understand. So that's a fantastic point, and thank you for mentioning that. And yes, that's the answer. So
thank you.
Please ask the second question.
Yeah. Second question is, you said that the top leader is almost in the deathbed. But what I see is not any particular person. It is about the system of your Iranian guard, as you said, and then Shurai Nigahban handpicked mullahs to control everything, including a fake democracy. So it's a question of the system. So how did you develop a counter system to topple, defeat this current system?
It's a system that's propped up by icons. It's a system that exists and is only propped up by the nature of the character of the supreme leader. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of infighting inside the ruling mullah structures, okay? Because do remember that there are more mullahs, as I mentioned in the very beginning, in prison, in the clerical prisons of Evin and Gohardasht and Fashafouye, than there are actually in the halls of power. The halls of power around the mullahs are beginning to crumble. The various families around the mullahs are beginning to crumble, like the Larijani family, 5 brothers. They were once called by a communist Jewish American woman writer, Barbara Slavin, who called them the Kennedys of Iran. They are born in Baghdad, and they were, they became power brokers of the mullah regime. But they've all been exposed, and they've all been had sanctions put on them, but not only the U.S. but also by the European Union now. So you have to think of the fact that the inside fighting of the mullah regime has eroded in a very serious way the structure and the power of that regime. So once Khamenei is gone, the mullahs themselves, the ruling mullahs, will no longer be able to stand on their own. Also because the Revolutionary Guards know that they are now that the mullahs are a liability. They've realized that. They know that the world is going to that once this regime. Once the system falls apart after Khamenei, that there is nobody who's reliable within that structure who can hold it together. Khamenei has been there from day one. He's been there since the 60s. And he has been the one who has, as I said, done a lot of the hard work and bolstering of Khomeini and essentially the bolstering of this system. Once he's gone, it's over.
Right.
And they themselves killed Rafsanjani. Rafsanjani was the other power broker of the regime.
A lot to cover because we have a lot of members of the audience.
Sure.
I'm going back to Dr. Selim Orhan. Dr. Selim Orhan, we know that the lady who lost her life, Mahsa Amini, she was of Kurdish origin, and you come from a Kurdish background. Kurdish people are probably oppressed everywhere. How do you see this?
Actually, I thought before you, I asked the Banafsh about this. What do you think? I will translate your question. Translate my question to ask Banafsh. What do you think about this started revolution, women revolution in all of the Iran? The end of this protest, what will be happen? The second question related to this first question, do you think this woman was killed if she wasn't a Kurdish woman? It will be occur again or not? Sorry for.
I don't understand I'm sorry. I don't understand your question.
Yeah, I know. It is the poor English. I thought I tried to.
No, but I don't understand. You think that she was killed because she was Kurdish?
Maybe she wasn't Kurdish. Yeah, I mean she was Kurdish, especially she was
arrested in Tehran. What does it have to do with her being Kurdish?
Yeah.
They arrested her on the street because her hijab was here.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with her being Kurdish.
Do you think the Kurdish regime are oppressed in Iran, Dr.
Listen, the Kurds in Iran have been oppressed by the regime. The Iranian people think of look. This is what's really very strange for me outside in the outside world. Mm-hmm. Inside Iran, we don't think, oh, this person is a Kurd. Oh, that person is from Shiraz. Oh, the other person is from Baluchistan. Oh, the other person is from Azerbaijan. We don't care. They're Iranian. This is the lies that the regime again. I grew up in Iran. I grew up in Iran where there were Jews, Baha'is, Christians, Sunnis, Buddhists, and I didn't know who was from Rasht, who was from Kurdistan, who was from Shiraz, and who was from Bandar Abbas. I didn't know. Nobody knew. Nobody cared.
Yeah, sorry, but I don't ask about the between people society, but
that's not. Listen, in Iran,
let's listen to the
Kurds are considered in Iran.
Okay. Let Salim rephrase.
I mean that especially for the state, for the government, the Persian identity is very strong.
Right. Persian identity is what? I'm sorry.
Persian identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is very strong. It is very important for the state.
What is the Persian identity?
I have no idea.
Have you seen the DNA?
Yeah, because they actually they didn't assimilate it of all the groups. I don't mean that.
Right. So you're trying to say, Dr. Salim, that if I get it right, that the Iranian regime failed to assimilate all the communities in Iran. And
there was nothing for the Iranian regime to assimilate. Those people were already assimilated. If anything, that regime was the one who created the divisions. They were the ones who singled out the Kurds. They were the ones who singled out the Baluchis, mainly because they're Sunnis.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's one issue.
So they play the minority card.
Because the Kurds were among the first who stood up to them, because the Komele, which is the Marxist group within the Kurdish Iran, has always been a very well-trained, very well-armed, and very patriotic group. And they fought that regime like nobody's business. And from day one, the Kurds have stood up to if you want to call it, like, to think of it in the ethnic struggle kind of a situation. The Kurds have stood up to this regime like heroes from day one. And we love and support our Kurds. And one of the most famous Iranian film directors is called Bahman Qabadi. Bahman Qabadi now lives in Paris. He's been making films about the plight of the people of Iranian Kurdistan. And the things that he says these days on Instagram, you wouldn't believe it. So for people who believe that Iranian Kurds want separatism, I don't know. I've never heard this before. And all the Kurds that are now on Instagram are people
sorry to interrupt, but when you're talking about, say, a dictator, sometimes the dictators do target a minority community to stir up the majority, so use the trouble to rule the country. Sometimes
that doesn't work. That hasn't worked in Iran.
What is that? What it is? What do you think, Dr. Orhan?
Yeah, I think absolutely right. Yeah, anybody doesn't have freedom in Iran. Okay, right. But when you became minority, it will become double for you.
Right. And
I'm sorry, but that's just
double trouble for
among the Iranian people, among the Iranian society. I am not talking about the regime. I am talking about the social relationships and viewpoints of people about each other.
No. I don't about the talking about people. People is okay. I don't mean the problem between society, between Persian and Kurdish and the Azerian. I mean, especially the regime depend on the majority group, Persian group, and they use as a tool, use a Persian identity.
But the
like
word Persian is like, I mean, what are the Persians? We are all Persians. There's no such thing as Persian. First of all, Persian is a stupid Greek word. Iran has always been Iran to us. Persian is a word that the Greeks created in order to describe the one area that they used to attack during the time of the Achaemenids. If you say Persian to Iranian scholars or Iranian historians, they'll laugh at you because Persian is a Greek word. It's not our identity. Our identity is Iranian. And Iran is a Sanskrit word which means the home of the hospitable people. And it was the name that was given to 37 different nations of people who came together under the Achaemenid dynasty. And that has been the Persian people.
Right.
It's not.
Okay,
there's
we'll
no
come back
such
to
thing
Dr.
as
Rohan.
a Persian person. You
Let's
have
move on to
the Persian body politic is the melting pot of 37 different tribes and identities and whatever you want to call it.
What is the bonding glue? What glued them? Like Bangladesh, we are bonded by our language, Bengali. So if you have so many tribes, everybody is Iranian.
Our history, our history and our culture and our language, not so much.
I mean, the commonness of the culture. Okay, let's move on to our security analyst, Jamal Hassan. Jamal Hassan, your question or opinion in the matter, please. You have to unmute. Sorry, you have to unmute.
Okay, now you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. Yes, go on.
Very well. Okay. Mufassir, I have some statement. I mean, going back to Hassan Mahmoud's discourse, when he said about how the Persian culture, Persian language has influenced the South Asian, especially Indian, Bengali culture.
Yes, in the mid 19th century.
So we know that Khuda Hafiz was one of the words, but Manoj, you may be aware that Ziaul Haq is I can say he is the main power broker, or you can say he was the eye of the storm, General Ziaul Haq of Pakistan, who Islamized certain narratives, certain vocabulary, certain cultural norms in not only Pakistan, in India and Bangladesh. Khuda Hafiz is one good example. Bangladeshi Muslims and many Indian Muslims and most Pakistanis do not use Khuda Hafiz anymore because assumingly Khuda belongs to Persian Allah, and which is a multiple Allah, not one single Allah. Khuda means different Allah, not Islamic Allah. So they incorporated the new word Allah Hafiz. Allah Hafiz becoming very popular. I watch any Bangladeshi drama on TV or any political discussion anywhere, 90% I see people say Allah Hafiz, which is incorporated. But that is one example of a new radicalization or new Wahhabization of Bangladesh. And I can say some people, including MBS of Saudi Arabia, he says that Iranian revolution has impact in the Sunni world. And he claims, MBS himself claims that before 1979, the Saudi women used to wear scarves, Western outfits. But because of the Sunni Shiite revolution, the Sunni clergies became very agitated. And in order to appease the Sunni clergies, the Saudi royalty became further to the right, further to the extreme Wahhabism. But that is one aspect. But I don't blame totally Iranian revolution. I can say Muslim Brotherhood and other influence was there in the Middle East. But what I want to say, Banafshe, when Iranian women, including 7-year-old girl, are killed by the regime, and they are throwing away their hijabs, I see among Bangladeshi community home and abroad, they are glamorizing hijab. A few days ago, I had an interesting talk with a 10-year-old New Yorker, Bangladeshi American girl. She's wearing full hijab, 10-year-old, not 20, remember. And she goes to United Nations, she goes to Harvard, gives lecture about climate change, and she's indirectly glamorizing the hijab. So it is outrageous. I talked to her and I told her in LinkedIn, then don't you know that Iranian women are dying to get into the hijab? She said, I like them. I don't mind they do that, but I like my hijab because it's my identity. So Banafshe, this is the reality in Bangladesh. If you open up any video blog, a traveling blog a woman is doing, you will see not scarf. I call it tight hijab, where the hair is totally covered with black and then white. A new phenomenon going on, and new, if you say radicalization, Islamization, Wahhabization, whatever call it. So I see that the sad side, the negative side of this going on, global, a new type of religiosity. So what do you think about that? Banafshi, your comment.
Well, look, I think that I do blame the revolution in Iran, and I blame it because the background of the Islamic Revolution, if you go back to the 70s, when they were people like Ali Shariati, who were an awful charlatans, intellectual charlatans, and they were doing things like hanging out in Paris with people like Jean-Paul Sartre and all of the French intellectuals and European intellectuals, and convinced that, and people who basically were thirsty for a revolution and for cultural change and political and social justice and all of that. And these groups of Shia charlatans basically recruited the Western left to continue the lies that they were propagating in order to further and further and further control society. And the hijab was one of those lies. So in 1979, and I was 18 years old, I was in my last year of high school, and I remember the day that on March 8th of 1979, I went to Khomeini had just arrived a month before, and his promise had been that no, don't worry, we're not going to impose any Islamic blah, blah, blah. No, Islam, women will be free, just like Fatima Zahra, all this kind of stuff. And so, but the Basij and the Revolutionary Guards were doing something completely the opposite. They were attacking women, and because back in those days, women were wearing mini skirts and they were wearing high heels, and there was no, they were wearing bikinis on the beaches in Iran. There had been an emancipation of women, an active emancipation of women, since the 1930s. And my mother, for example, was one of those women who was came to the States. She went to USC. She got 2 PhDs. She became the first woman head of customs in Iran. And we had rights and freedoms that these guys very actively took away. The Khomeiniist regime has been threatened by women from day one. And one of the most interesting thing is that from the hijab and chastity of a woman has been their outcry from day one. However, if you look at Iranian society, desperation and destitution, privation and poverty has driven married women to prostitution. Their husbands know it. Their husbands who cannot bring in enough money to raise a family. If you are kind enough to look at a paper that I wrote in 2014 called Gutting Iran, I wrote it for the Canadian Parliament, and it describes the various social damages that have occurred under the Khomeiniist regime. It's an 8-year-old report, but it still holds, and it's much, much more horrific than it was even 8 years ago, the situation now. I described the women's situation there. The level of horrors that women go through in Iran is, I can't even begin to tell you. The things that they do to women in prisons, the things that they do to the executions that they carry out against women who are raped and all they're trying to do is defend themselves. They hang them. They punish women. The rights of a woman in Iran is half of that of a man. And yet the woman gets a harsher punishment in their version of the Sharia.
Can you give an example? Can you give an example of getting the harsher punishment than the men?
Well, I just explained. If you're a woman and you're raped by a man,
I see.
and you defend yourself and you harm and you kill the man in self-defense, you're executed.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing, but this is unbelievable. But okay, let's move on. We'll go now to the final leg of the program. We have several members of the audience who are interested in asking questions. We will start with Arindam Pandit in India. Arindam Pandit, can you introduce yourself and ask the question, please?
Hi.
Who would you like to ask the question? Can you please also clarify that?
Good morning and good evening all. This is Arindam Pandit. As Muhammad said, I am from India and by profession, I am an IT professional. And I strongly believe in equality, justice, and personal freedom. And I strongly believe that religious practices or religion should not be a socio-cultural identity or even a personal identity. Many may not agree with me. Okay, and if someone to carry it, okay, they can carry it loosely, little loosely, not that tightly. But about the Iranian religion, my question is, okay, as I heard from you that your vision is that religion is nowhere in Iran now, but definitely there would come a vacuum as people have some philosophical quest inside that. So what, get grasp of that vacuum and what is the sustainability? I mean, my question is a chain question. Let me take this opportunity. And what would be this implication, especially as a person of this subcontinent? What could be its impact on this subcontinent, especially in Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh? Where is your vision on that?
That's a fantastic question, actually. And so let me just say, when I say religion is over in Iran, I don't mean that, that there won't be people who are people of faith and all of that. I mean the nature of fanatical religion being imposed on society as a broad brush stroke. So in other words, to say, oh yes, we'll have another Shia takeover. Oh yes, the Christians are going to come and take over. It's never going to be that way. Iranians are going to are going back to the nature of the melting pot of the way they used to worship before the revolution. Yes, there were more Shia, but it doesn't matter. We had a very, very large, thriving society of various other religions. Like I said, we had Buddhists, we had people who, Zoroastrians, we had Jews of various different identities and so on. Anyway, that said, I think that the disappearance of the Khomeiniist regime, in terms of the fact that, you have to think of them, Arindam, as like a purse. They go around spending money, and they pay off and buy supporters, especially supporters who are Muslim. So don't forget the Taliban, for example. They've had a relationship with the Taliban, and people have said to me, "Oh no, I mean, I had American generals in the early 2000s who were saying, no, it's not possible for these guys to have a relationship with Al Qaeda and the Taliban. Why? It's terrorism that we're talking about, not and we're talking about the grander idea of the Mohammedan." The Mohammedan fanaticism that brings these people together as a terror force. Once, however, that terror has been achieved and the power lands squarely in the hands of the terrorists, then those two terrorists can fight amongst themselves, and may the winner of the two be the greater force. But the point that I'm trying to make is that, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many, many of the Iranians who have been watching and who are connected to various Afghan communities, and I mean, I have dear friends in BK in Quetta, for example, in Pakistan. And, I talk to all of these people and they say, you have no idea how much the fanatics, even the Sunni fanatics in various small pockets of areas in Muslim countries, are bolstered and use the example of the Khomeiniist regime in order to promote their own control over their environments. So once the Khomeiniist regime falls, and once the whole nature and idea of an Islamic republic, the oxymoron of an Islamic republic, falls, I think it will have become so delegitimized as a power that, bringing it back or trying to reviving it or trying to recreate it somewhere else will be a pipe dream. They have really done, and this is again what in fact Jamal said. It's really important to keep in mind the fact that the Mullah regime really spread a huge big lie about itself and its wanting to bring the Muslim society and Islamic world together. Really, this became even more evident, okay, when they I've had conversations with people where they look at me like I've plugged their finger into an electrical socket, where they say to me, oh, the Khomeiniist regime has the right to have a nuclear bomb. The Israelis have a nuclear bomb and they should be able to defend themselves against the Israelis. I say, okay, that's fine. But then they claim that they support the Palestinians and the other Muslims. Do you actually think that this nuclear weapon that they're going to use is going to spare Palestinians and Lebanese and other Shia and so on? And when you say this, I've said this to people, and they look at me as if, oh my God, it hadn't even occurred to me. I hadn't even imagined the fact, as if it's a smart bomb and it's going to somehow recognize the percentage of the difference of bloodlines between the Jews and the Palestinians. So when you tell people that the Khomeiniist regime is willing to drop Muslim bodies in order to control the Islamic world, and Muslim bodies who never volunteered to be dropped.
Right. Thank you. Let's move on to the next member of the audience. We have almost 200 people with us in the Zoom now. Sharta Ghosh from India. Do you have any question?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to say that about a decade back, I had few Iranian friends who were actually studying in Pune. And that was my first encounter with Iranian people. And I was surprised because I thought that Iran would be very conservative Muslim country, but I found that they were actually very liberal. In fact, probably more liberal than average Indian. So it was a pleasant surprise for me. So now my question is, like, I think a few years back, even in 2018-19, also there was some protests were going on, right?
November and December of 2019. Yes.
Yes. And then I think then COVID happened and it had to probably end or something like that. And also, I think COVID was very bad for Iran, like everywhere else. And a few months back also, I have read that there were few news about inflation, like price rise, and there was some problem regarding that. So what I'm trying to ask is that, and also we know that there are US sanctions and Iran, for instance, India used to be a big importer of Iranian oil. Now India
It
cannot
still
import.
is. It still is.
Yeah,
It
but
still
now India
is.
India cannot import actually because of US sanctions.
I know that, but they've just signed a huge, Modi has just signed a huge deal with the Russians in order to do the pipeline from Chabahar, from southern Iran to into Russia, and the money goes into India's pocket.
Okay, so so I'd like to know that are economic reasons, including inflation, also somehow playing a role, in this?
Listen, look. Let me tell you, Satrak. The first of all, the Iranians have never wanted this regime because because it turned out to be a complete lie. Because it has done more disservice to the Iranian people than it claimed to do. It has, the mullahs have basically depleted Iran's surplus bullion. The people of Iran are starving. In 43 years, our population went from 1979, that was 35 million. Now there is 83 million people in Iran. There are people who have PhDs and who are selling fruits on the side of the street. There is no industry. Our laborers are all being put in prison. China has basically taken over all of Iran's pretty much economy. Even carpet making has been replaced by Chinese machine rugs, right? So the thing is that Iran has been gutted by the Khomeiniist regime and by the Khomeiniist leaders in order to take the money that belongs to the sale of the natural assets and the natural resources of Iran in order to pay for their terrorism and their nuclear ambitions. And their nuclear ambitions are extremely real. They are very much building the nuclear bombs. The IAEA now says it. They nearly raped one of the women who was an inspector for the IAEA. She was a Swiss woman. They harassed her and they sexually abused her last time, and they are refusing to let the IAEA guys come in. Hans Blix has said so. It's look. Nothing that you read about the Khomeiniist regime in the media itself. You want good information about Iran? You know where you should go? Al Arabiya English. Or the Telegraph. The BBC lies. The New York Times is owned by the mullahs. The Washington Post is practically owned by the mullahs. The Guardian, they're communists, so they love the mullahs, and they've got some of the mullah boys working there. And they do everything they can in order to create doubt and seem like, oh, the mullahs are so, no. Everything that you can imagine. Look, I have no axe to grind. If this regime was fabulous, believe me, I would be back in Iran. They tried to kidnap me off the streets of New York City in 2004. They threw my father out the balcony of his apartment in 2011 after 17 years in and out of prison because he was a free-thinking journalist. And he had the guts to stay in Iran and fight against the lies and the charlatanism of these guys. And every single person who has done this, and you can look at the numbers that is quoted by Amnesty International and various human rights organizations, and I'm telling you that along with the 900,000 innocent Iranians who were killed during the 8 years of the Iran-Iraq war in the 80s, something to the tune of about 5 million Iranians, and I'm just giving you a roundabout number, but you will never find the statistics, something to the tune of about 5 million Iranians have been killed at the altar of the Khomeiniist regime in the past 43 years.
Right. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. We have Mr. Amar. Mr. Amar, could you introduce yourself and ask your question, please? Thank you.
First of all, you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon in my time here.
Where are you calling from?
I'm from Washington, D.C. I'm in Northern Virginia, other side of Capitol. I've been involved with national and international sociopolitics aspects, and as a lawyer, I served ICT in Bangladesh for under human rights and crime against humanity, and also for genocide aspect. I was a prosecutor. From that background, as a lawyer, we have seen worldwide, globally, all sectarian problems based on when the state feels insecure, they attack the minorities and divert the attention of the mass people to somewhere else. This is a kind of a formula. It happens in India, it happens in Bangladesh, it happens in Pakistan. It happens almost everywhere. But I wanted to granularize the main focus where the problem starts, why the problem starts. After 50 or 60 years, people think that the occurrence or event or bad events 50 years ago, everybody forgot. Actually not. That's why I'm going back since the current very hot topic about Iran. It actually connects with Kurd and the Kurdistan, not in only Iran. It's part of it is in Iran, part of it is in Egypt, and another country. So 4 sectors. Now my question is to Ms. I forgot the name actually.
Anaf Shazand.
Okay. So my question is, since you are carrying a legacy of a wonderful leadership family, ruling family once, so you are more conversant, and since you are talking today, we are seeing that you are so open and liberal and very accommodative. So do you think that if still actually Kurdists, they are trying to get their own state, and the problem in that region is always one of the problem is Kurds. It's not the problem, but it's the issue of their independence. That four section of Kurds can never be together.
Iranian Kurds don't want to be. There's a very small minority of Iranian Kurds who want to join a larger Kurdistan.
No, since as a lawyer and a consultant, and there are a lot of groups come to me and we discuss when any human rights violation happens in any region globally, because Washington, D.C. have all those important people from all over the globe. That's the beauty of Washington, D.C., that we can really, the hardest part is within 3-4 days, it will take 3-4 days to connect to a leadership of a particular sect of any country. So it's very easy. And I have a very good group, those who really wanted to be an independent Kurd. But
From Iran?
Say,
Are they from Iran?
they're from Iraq.
Iraq.
So, yeah. But the thing is, these the four nation Kurds can never come together. Now, if I say individual state, one of those Kurd state, like if they're willing to give the Kurds release and give them an independent country.
I thought we were here to speak about Iran and not specifically.
Yeah, I'm talking about Kurds. That's why I'm talking about.
Are you trying to say
it's a non-starter.
Okay,
it's a
that's why I'm
non-starter
asking
because
you,
the fact of the matter is that
I'm
the Iranian
asking
Kurds
you
and the
whether
Kurdish people
Iran-
have to decide this amongst themselves. This is an
whether
issue
Iran
among the
will be
Kurdish
letting
people,
that
and it has to be
Iranian
decided
Kurds be
amongst
free.
themselves.
Okay. What is the exact question again?
My question is to since she is from Iran, talking about Iran, whether Iran as a state or she's a part of the once ruling party or a leading.
I'm a part of no ruling party. I'm an activist and a journalist.
Okay, now you're a journalist. Now, do you think that Kurds from Iran's side, if they want an independent country to join to other, will you let them do?
Right.
Let them? Who the hell am I,
opinion?
or who the hell is any Iranian to let anybody to do anything? It's their country. It's their statehood. If they really want to, then it's their right to do so. But I'm not in a position of saying, "Oh, you're not allowed to do that."
No, it's
I'm
not
not a
that.
Canadian
What
who's
is your
going to tell
opinion?
Quebec not to concede. That's not the way we work.
It's a kind of a litmus test.
No. It's really not. You listen. I'm sorry, but you are talking about a small group of people that you know, and you're not looking at the greater formation of a nation. First of all, you've got to consider the fact that the Iraqi Kurds, who have all the oil, and there's only 3 million of them, are they going to want to share that oil money with the rest of the 17 million Kurds who are going to want to join them?
What about you, Dr. Orhan? Do you think that there's a problem of the Kurds in Iran? Do you think there's a problem, Dr. Orhan, being a Kurd yourself? Do you think it's a problem?
Good.
Dr. Orhan,
Yeah, I think so.
it's a problem. I see.
Yeah, absolutely. Not problem is not just the humanist regime. Even before humanist regime,
I see.
many protests, many conflicts between Kurdish groups and Iranian regime in history, Republic of Muhabbat, we know.
Right.
1946.
Right. Okay, let's move on to our next guest, Samarian Bhattacharjee. Samarian Bhattacharjee, you are next. Could you introduce yourself, where you're calling from, and what is your question, please?
Hi, I'm from USA, Maryland.
Okay.
And I am very much happy to join with all you guys here. I'm very carefully watching the happenings in Iran. It is very much encouraging for the rest of the world that women are actually trying to revolt against the stagnant impression, a kind of oppression against them. And so actually my concern is, after this almost 1 month of struggle, what we can expect in the future. Is there any solid leadership which can control the whole of this movement together so that it can bring a real success in future? Or if what is your personal belief or understanding is jihad?
If you think of the various protests that I mentioned that Iranians have held since the beginning of the advent of this revolution, up until 2009, all the protests were carried out by various echelons of society. So women would protest on one day, then another day students would protest, and another day workers would protest, and another day journalists would protest, and so on and so forth. In 2009, all of those groups came together. All of those groups finally became one giant movement in terms of the fact that everybody started to work together, and every faction and social echelon that would go out there, the other ones would follow and join them as well. So it was never a separated and sort of scattered protests. They were protests that everybody was involved in. All echelons of society became involved in as of 2009. The fact of the matter is that I know many people don't want to accept this, and I don't really care. I've heard so many people, oh no, this regime's never going to go, blah, 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 blah. Okay, whatever they want to say, they can say. The fact of the matter is that this regime is on its way out. This situation right now may not bring it to the absolute screeching halt, but it's getting very, very close to that precipice. And I'm telling you three things. One, the fact of the fact that Putin's support is waning because of the war in Ukraine, and because of the fact that he is being very, very quickly marginalized. And the Russians inside the Duma and inside the foreign ministry despise the regime, though they work with them very closely. They despise the regime because they know that the regime does things without their permission, without their knowledge, that ends up becoming problems for the Russians to have to clean up later on. That's one. The second part of it is that the European Union has realized, because of all of the corrupt and dirty efforts that they've made in order to prop up this regime, and in order to continue doing their dirty trade and business with them, that it is no longer sustainable, because the Iranian people have become so angry with them, and the amount of money that the regime has spent within Europe in order to maintain a hyper-religious and very scary Islamic presence within European echelons, that too has become unsustainable. Just look at who just got elected in Italy. Just look at who just got elected in Sweden, the conservatives. And the third thing is that, yes, up to now, there was no leadership because the Iranian people became afraid of the nature of a leader. The last leader we had lied to us and destroyed our country and basically turned a nation that had everywhere to go. I mean, if we had been left alone, we could have been the Japan of the Middle East right now. That said, the fact of the matter is that that time is over. And the Western left that has been supporting and has been propping these people up are now falling apart. Just look at the state of affairs within the Democratic Party in the United States. In November, when the elections come and go, and the Republicans are sure to win many more seats than the Democrats, the Biden administration will have absolutely no choice but to heel to the demands of Congress, not to sign this second ridiculous nuclear deal. There is no deal to sign. Obama last night admitted it. He actually said, I was foolish not to support the Iranian people's protests in 2009. So the man who was the first initiator of the JCPOA, the guy who was the architect of the JCPOA himself, I can't remember his name now. It's Bruce something. I can't remember. He worked at the state. That guy stepped aside 3 months ago and said, there is no deal to be signed with this regime.
Okay.
So on many practical levels, this regime cannot sustain itself anymore. And by the way, I'm going to say one last thing. The sanctions against the regime are not against the Iranian people. There have never been sanctions on foodstuffs and medicine and medical supplies. Anything that has been sanctioned, the Khomeiniist regime and the Revolutionary Guards themselves created a black market for. And the Iranian people are paying the price of available products that the regime has lied about and said that there were sanctions.
Right.
There are no sanctions on foodstuffs.
We are pressured for time.
Yes.
We have just time for 2 more questions, very quick questions. Sure. Next is Irfan Majumdar. Irfan, do you have any question? And introduce yourself, please.
Yes, greetings. This is Irfan Majumdar from Dhaka, Bangladesh. I'm a student studying economics, majoring in economics at a university. This is an honor session for all of us. And my question is to Banafce. Greetings to you. And my question is, as a human rights activist, you have worked in 2007 for secularist Islamist summits. You were one of the key organizers in 2007. Do you see the current situation, the dwelling of secularism in Iran, specifically against Islamist regime? Because let's be honest, we are seeing that it is a conflict against Islamist regimes. And do you see how you see the dwelling or the overall dwelling of secularism in Iran? And my final question, my final request to you to introduce some of the parts of your father's struggle, because as far as I studied him, he was a great man, a journalist. So this is an honored question to you to end in this session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to introduce one of our secular Islam participants, my dear friend of 20 years, Hassan Mahmoud, who was also one of our distinguished speakers. That was a really wonderful experience. That was an incredible time when Hassan and I came together through our mutual friend Ibn Waraq, Tariq Ismail, and this became a really interesting dialogue and friendship, basically, among a whole group of us that has lasted now 20 years. In terms of the secularism of Iranian people, look, Iranians have always been very watered down when it comes. I mean, back in the Iran that I grew up in, I come from a big clan or a tribe of people. So my life was very much, although there was a lot of international influence and so on and so forth, and everybody in Iran back in those days had access to international influence. I mean, my God, we used to have Hollywood movies being shot in Iran back in those days. But there was also a huge core of the Iranian customs and traditional life and thinking and relating to each other and so forth. And none of that had anything to do with religion. None of that had anything to do with faith. It had something to do with national customs and our identities. And that has been the saving grace of the Iranian nation against the Mullas. that our Iranianness is the thing that, you know, our history, our culture, all of the things that make, I mean, so in other words, if you think of Islam, I mean, Iranians always say Islam is a religion that makes you want to, it kills joy, it takes your happiness away, it takes all of the feeling of wanting to do better, the individual becoming accomplished and thinking for themselves and free inquiry. Iranians are very much individualists. They're philosophers. They are people who really explore the nature and purpose of the universe. And for that, a religion that does not permit free inquiry has always been a most debilitating and limiting issue. And again, it's the secularist mode of Iranian thinking that has managed to save us against this regime for the past 43 years. So every time they said, oh, you're not allowed to do the fire festival before the Iranian New Year. We have a festival, we set fire to bushes on the last Wednesday of the year, which is the spring equinox is the vernal equinox is our New Year. And the last Tuesday before that, we jump over fire. It's a tradition. It's an Achaemenid and Zoroastrian tradition where people jump over the fire. And as they're saying, jumping over the fire, they say, my corruption and my yellowness, my cowardice, and all of my pain of the last year to the fire. And the fire gives its warmth and its redness to me and purifies me to go into the new year. So all of these kinds of things are things that the Muslim leaders in Iran have tried to defy, and Iranians have refused. Now, in terms of my father was a larger than life man. He was really an interesting person. He, if I showed you some photographs of him interviewing Eisenhower, interviewing Walt Disney in the 60s. My father was the only Iranian journalist in 1961 in Jerusalem at the Eichmann trial at that time. He traveled the world and met Indira Gandhi and interviewed her several times. She knew him by sight. She knew him by name. He was somebody who really was, to me, I'm always moved and amazed at what a person he was. And I only wish that they hadn't broken him the way they did. They took him apart.
Right. Let's move on. Thank you, Banafshe. Let's move on to Adnan. Adnan, please introduce yourself and ask your question. Thank you, Adnan.
Yes. Good evening. I'm Adnan Zahir Ahmad, speaking from Dhaka, Bangladesh. I'm a network distributor for a Korean company, South Korea. So my question is, can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the screen seems frozen. Oh, that's why. Yeah, so as I was saying, you know, let's talk about the late Shah.
You're breaking up.
You see, the British installed him to the. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, try it. Try now.
Okay, is it clear? Am I heard?
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you, and we can hear you.
Yeah, go on.
Okay, so.
But the British did not install Reza Shah. So.
Yeah, Reza. I mean, his
already
father.
You're wrong. Already you're wrong. Go on.
So they installed him. Yeah, I want to finish it. So they installed Mohammad Reza Shah because his dad was pro-German, and since he was pro-British, and again in 1953, the CIA installed him again after they ousted Prime Minister Mohammad Mustafa.
Garbage
so they
history.
always had this
This is
idea that he was the right-hand man of the
I'm
West.
not going to listen.
Okay, let's hear from.
This is garbage history because the British were the ones who made the Shah, who claimed the Shah was a Nazi. That's complete and utter nonsense. The reason why they
Yeah,
claimed
the
it,
Shah's
and I'm
father.
going to correct you on this now. Listen, Adnan, listen. You want answers? Let me give you answers. Do not give me American stupid history of Iran. I'm telling you what the real history is. In 1925, when Reza Shah was the prime minister of Iran, okay, he changed the name on the stamps that at the time were being produced in Belgium. Belgium, the customs of Belgium was producing stamps for postage stamps for all the countries of the world. Reza Shah wrote the Belgian customs and said, please do not say La Perse or Persia. We are not La Perse. We are Iran. Now, American Nazis have lied, and this has been a garbage lie that the British and all the American communists have been repeating now ever since, that the Shah in 1937, in order to kissy kiss with Hitler, changed the name of Iran in order to look like he's Aryan. Well, we're the original Aryans, and Hitler was the liar. Okay? So let's get our history correct. And the British did not install the Shah. The Shah, the British exiled Reza Shah. The British did not even know what to do with the Shah. It was the Americans under Truman who helped the Shah, the 21-year-old Shah in 1944, to start becoming the Shah. In fact, the Shah in 1948 handpicked Mossadegh because there was no such thing as a democratic election, which Americans and Westerners lie about, that Mossadegh was a democratically elected prime minister. No such thing. The Shah handpicked Mossadegh. 1. 2, Mossadegh was a prince. He was a son of the previous dynasty that had been kicked out by the Iranian people, the Qajar dynasty. And Mossadegh picked up the mantle of Reza Shah. Reza Shah was the one who in 1931 took the British Iranian Oil Company to task, saying, you are taking oil from my country and you are giving us 10% of the sale of the sale. You're taking 90%. We want 50%. They got rid of the Shah primarily, of the Reza Shah, primarily because of that. And then in 1949-50, when Mossadegh picked up Reza Shah's mantle and started fighting the British for the same issue, and took the British to court in The Hague and won, the British dragged the brand new CIA back in the day into what their MI6 had created as Operation Ajax.
Sorry, Manavsha, I have to cut you there because already 10 minutes over the time. We are having a
Yes,
great
I'm sorry.
program. But before we close,
look, it's important to get garbage history out of the way.
Yes, because
it's important.
Because you have a deeper understanding of it. We are scratching the surface. That's why you're here today. Now, Manavsha, you took the Iranian regime to the court, and they were sued under Foreign Service Sovereign Immunities Act. Now, tell us about it. Tell us about the case.
It's a case that other Iranians and Syrians, Iraqis, several of the former Iranian political prisoners, families of Syrians, various people have sued the regime. Like even some of the prisoners, like Shi Wang, the Chinese guy who was in Iran, who was a PhD student at Princeton, who went to Iran, and they put him in prison for 4 years. So various people have sued, and the idea is that it's really just about seeking justice for the things that this regime continues to do to people. In my case, I continue to get death threats. They still make death threats against me. They tried to kidnap me off the streets of New York City in 2004, one day in August of 2004 after a demonstration. They did everything they could to basically get me discredited and get the grants and everything that I was working with, all the funding that I was working with. I was always just on grants on various projects that people would come to me and ask me if, we'd like to hire you as consultant. So they made sure that myself and many other Iranians were blacklisted, and we didn't get that. And the Obama administration, as I said, went along with it. So in 2011, after all those years of my father being in and out of prison, and they tortured him so badly that it really wreaked havoc psychologically and physically on him. And so 2011, they threw him out of the 6th floor balcony, though they keep on claiming that he's committed suicide. Everybody knows they didn't. And people in the building facing my father's building saw this. So the fact is that for us, it was something that we had to do. And it wasn't a question of the money. The money
mostly symbolic, because they will not pay up anyway. Right.
No, it's not even a question of not paying. It's a question of the fact that for us, it's just the point that, everybody needs to expose this regime in its most objective form. And we got an objective third party from another country to look at the facts that were in evidence, even via the media. Everything we had was documented.
Right.
And the judge just looked at it and said, this is crimes against humanity.
Absolutely. Thank you. Now let's close up the program. I will take a closing remark in less than a minute, please, if you can. Mr. Hassan Mahmoud, your closing remarks, please.
All the best to Iranian people. Hell with the mullahs.
Very good. Thank you. Precinct. Mr. Jamal Hassan. Mr. Jamal Hassan, your closing remarks, please.
Yes, long live the Iranian people. I have been watching them with awe and amazement. I mean, I was amazed with their, because I should remind, in 1986, I had the opportunity to come to Washington, D.C. to join a rally. And at the time, the once now marginalized, the Mujahideen Khalq group arranged the party and it's a big rally in Washington, D.C. But I saw cheerful Iranians from all parts of USA joining, and I knew expatriate Iranians are extremely jubilant seeing what's happening in Iran. And long live Iran, long live Iranian people. And I can tell you, Banafsheh, if today the Mullah regime falls, it will have a positive global impact. Tomorrow we'll see a new world. Let's hope for the best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jamal Hassan.
I would like to say, please, anybody who would like to get in touch with me, by all means, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram. Please, I would be delighted to be in touch with anybody has any questions, especially Salim. Please get in touch.
Dr. Salim Orhan, your closing remark, please.
Thank you so much for everything. Incredible presentation. I can say the death of the dictatorship, long living freedom of women in Iran.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies to all the people who couldn't be part of the program today because we didn't have the time. We are constrained by time, but a very, very good program. I think we have done it. And also a special thanks to Mr. Jamal Hassan, who made it possible today, because he was the man who patched me up with this great lady, Banafsheh. Banafsheh, your closing remark today, please.
First of all, I would like to thank Lara, who's been here the whole time, and she hasn't said a word.
If you have the time, I will allow Lara to talk. But Lara, do you have anything to say? Lara.
Second of all,
Hi, salam.
Salam.
Hello, how are you?
Fine, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us. I wish
Hello.
more ladies were here with us.
I
as well, but-
am always with you, Irani woman, because I don't like hijab. Why should we wear hijab? It's a Quran don't say 33:59 ayat. Why we should wear hijab? I don't like hijab. The forced hijab is very good. Fight for right always.
Very good. Very good. Lisa. Yes, Bharat.
So the last thing I want to say is that, you know, please realize that if we, any of us Iranians sound tough, or if we sound like we're angry, or we sound like we're frustrated, it's because we are, because everything that this regime has done to us is so horrific, that, you know, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction. And in the case of this regime, the truth really is stranger than fiction, because they count on the disbelief of the people who are not experiencing any of this stuff alongside us. They count on the fact that people would go, are you serious? This is what they do over there? No, that can't be possible. So they want to make us look like we're a bunch of crazies. Meanwhile, they're getting away with murder. I'm begging you, please stand by us.
Thank you.
And know that we want our country to be free and a part of the peaceful and jubilant international global society.
Thank you very much. And we'll end this program with the words of great Mr. Martin Luther King, let freedom reign. And at last, we will walk free. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
All of you.
Thank you,
Thank
Bharat.